Have you ever spoken up about something and it ended up being totally awkward, hurtful, or embarrassing? You didn't mean it any harm by what you said, the words came out of your mouth and it ended up doing more damage than good. I think we can all say that we've been there before. Now, this next part in the guide said to share an example of when you said something and it's caused offence or harm. Now, conveniently, I can't remember any examples, so what I did was text my colleagues, and they were very quick to remind me of a time when I had said something that was a bit not particularly well thought through. So the first one, we were on a film shoot, and I just said in front of about 20 people that I needed a male because they're generally just more aggressive. That didn't go down that well that time. And the other time we were on a film shoot and some actors were getting made up like zombies, and I said to about 15 people probably, once you've got your makeup on, you're going to look even worse than you do now. That didn't go down well. If you've been there like me, then you know how it feels. Of course, we don't have the bad intentions when we say these things. After all, it's just our opinion, but it can cause awkwardness, embarrassment, or even hurt. It kind of makes us wonder if it's okay to ever speak up. But as bad as those awkward moments can be, I think they're actually not the moments when we fear speaking up the most. Now, I think that most often, the place where a lot of us have a fear of sharing our opinions is actually with our friends. Now, you may be like, wait a minute, I can totally talk to my friends about anything. Well, that's because I'm not talking about the easy stuff that you can share about every day. I'm talking about the stuff that's a bit more hard, the difficult stuff, the stuff that makes speaking up or speaking out complicated. Think about the last time you saw a friend making a bad choice. Maybe they were hanging out with the wrong crowd, a group of people influencing them to make a not so great decision. Or maybe they were dating someone who was pressuring them to do something they shouldn't do, and your friend was slowly giving in. Or maybe they were disobeying and disrespecting their parents, lying or arguing or getting angry. Maybe you saw them stop caring about school or homework or showing up to class at all. We've all been there. We've all had a friend do something or be on the verge of doing something that we know is really not good for them. And when that happens, if you're anything like me, you probably feel like you should say something, but you just don't feel comfortable or feel like you have a right to. I want you to listen to some of these situations of why speaking up honestly to a friend might be difficult and see whether you've experienced them before. Have you ever been convinced yourself not to speak up because you felt like what your friend was doing was not that big of a deal? Have you ever not spoken up because you told yourself, I don't want to ruin the friendship or make my friend annoyed with me? Have you ever not spoken up to a friend because you thought, what can I even say? I've done the same thing. On what grounds do I have to stand on to speak up? Have you ever avoided speaking to someone or to a friend because you felt it was none of your business? It had nothing to do with you, so it didn't affect you. Could you actually say anything about it? Have you ever convinced yourself not to speak up to a friend because you thought, I don't think they'll listen anyway, and even if I did speak up, it won't make a difference? Have you ever not spoken up honestly to a friend because you know that you're not supposed to gossip, but it sort of felt like gossip, even though you just brought it up to them and wasn't going behind their back, but it still felt like unwholesome talk, the thing we're not supposed to do? And finally, have you ever avoided speaking up to a friend because you thought, I've already told them this, what are they going to think if I tell them again and again and again? We've all been in situations where we know we should speak up, but we make excuses for why we don't. And while I think it's normal to feel that way, we're going to learn today why that probably isn't the best choice we can make. Now let me pause here and say, I know this isn't the case for all of us. Some of you having no problem speaking up to your friends all the time. You aren't shy about it at all, telling your friends what you think. Well, don't pause the video and go elsewhere just yet. This is for you as well. Because when it comes to speaking up in situations like these, we all have hesitations. Maybe for you, speaking up is a struggle, and you constantly question whether it's worth the risk. Or maybe speaking comes easily, but you probably don't always offer your opinion in the nicest way. Either way, there's things to learn for both of those situations. This question of how to find the best way to speak up isn't a new one. About 2,000 years ago, a guy named the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the church in a place called Galatia, and which addressed this very issue. Paul wrote this letter because he cared about the believers in the church. He knew they were trying to figure out how to live the best way. But honestly, they were struggling, because sometimes knowing how to do that can be confusing. That's why Paul put pen to paper and wrote to his friends. Take a look at what he wrote. Now, even though Paul addressed this passage to people who lived a long time ago, I think we can all still learn something from it. It doesn't matter if you grew up in a church or if this is your first time watching these videos. This can apply to all of us. See, Paul addressed this passage to fellow Christian believers because they were his friends. He cared about them. He cared about what happened to them, and because of that, he didn't want them to make choices where they hurt themselves or others. I think we can all relate to that feeling, right? When we care about someone else, then we want what's best for them. We don't want them to see them hurt themselves or anyone else. And sometimes that means we have to speak up when we see them heading in that direction. So, what did Paul say we should do? According to this verse, when we see friends who are struggling with the things that might hurt them, or they're moving down a path that is going to lead to something harmful, it's important that we do all we can to help them to get back on the right path. And a lot of times that includes speaking up. Now, I get this is super hard for a lot of us. Like we said earlier, there are so many reasons not to say anything. Because we don't want our friends to necessarily want to hear. We're afraid it will hurt their feelings or upset them or damage our relationship with us. But I think in those situations where our friends are walking towards something that could really be bad news for their lives and futures, we have to care about the person more than their relationship. We have to care enough about our friend that they will be willing to speak up, even if it means our friendship is a little bit bruised in the process. I know that it can be a hard thing to do, so try this for me. Put yourselves in their shoes. If you were the one that was maybe choosing a bad decision, and you would want someone to tell you, wouldn't you? Would you want a friend to stop you and help you point it out if they had potential? Or would you want them to have courage or have a hard conversation with you? I know I would want them to do that. Well, you see, a friend in that place, you have the chance to be that person for them. You have the opportunity to speak up and help them move towards the right path. Now, like we said, there are some of you who are like, I'm not afraid to speak up. I even kind of like telling people where they're at. Well, look back at the verse again, because Paul didn't just tell us how to help our friends. He told us how we should do it, with generosity, gentleness, and humility. See, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. You need to speak the truth, but you need to do it in the right way and the right heart. Paul says to gently and humbly help the friends you see struggling down the wrong path. What does that look like? Well, it means speaking with kindness, love, and encouragement, instead of anger and frustration and judgment. It means caring about the person that you're speaking to. Be helpful, encouraging, and loving. In other words, use kindness and love when we speak. When we approach tough conversations with love and kindness, it will change both what we say and how we say it. We'll speak up because we love others and we want what's best for them, and we'll do it in love, using words that encourage, rebuild, and help our friends get back on the right path. Remember, use kindness and love when you speak up. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you think you might need to speak up, I want you to remember a couple of things. Number one, what does it look like to love my friend and show kindness in this situation? Maybe it's the way that you talk to them about it, the actual words that you use in the conversation. Maybe it's about choosing a gentle tone over a harsh one. Maybe it's choosing to talk about it with just that person instead of in front of other people. Maybe it's simply agreeing to pray for them or offer them continued encouragement when you see them making good choices. Maybe it's not saying anything at all until you work out how to say it in a gentle and humble way. Whatever it is, before you speak, consider what it will look like to show the other person love in your conversation. Or number two, what would I want? Put yourself in their shoes. If this was you, would you want someone to talk to you about the issue? How would you want them to talk to you about it? In other words, how would you want someone to show you love and kindness in this conversation? Think about that and try and do the same for your friends. So remember, this week, keep in mind, use kindness and love when you speak up. See you guys soon.